Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the call tonight. This is our weekly HerbWorks call with Roger Drummer. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Zach. I'm Roger Drummer's business partner. And several years ago, we formed HerbWorks, which is HerbWorks.com. And I met Roger about 10 years ago. And at the time, I was dealing with a lot of health issues, and some of them being brain issues. I was dealing with chronic fatigue, low-level depression, ADHD, and had spent a tremendous amount of money on naturopaths, homeopaths, Western medicine. I think it was in the tens of thousands of dollars, probably close to $20,000. And I really couldn't get any relief. And to my amazement, I meet Roger, I had no clue who he was, what he did, and I drank one of his herbal tonics. And it completely blew me away because within a matter of a day or two, something shifted. My whole brain just shifted, and I felt great. And I knew back then, I knew immediately that Roger was somebody special. Not only the way he formulates and the way he works with Chinese herbs, but his knowledge about how to explain things and the true understanding of how the energy centers within the body need to balance. And it's not just one energy center, not just the brain energy center. It's the energy centers of the whole body, which actually feed up into the brain. And I don't know if he's going to get into that tonight. That might be on a future call, but his knowledge really blew me away. And through all this, I asked Roger to join me in business and get his drink on the market. And we launched this back in 2009, and it was a drink called Tianqi. Now, Roger's going to talk a lot tonight about brain health and saving your memory and so forth, and there's no one else out there that I can actually endorse or that can better speak about this issue because I know firsthand from the way he can formulate and his ability to actually help those who need help. And for me, it was a lifesaver. I was in such a funk. I really couldn't function, and Tianqi completely saved my life. So, Roger, what I want to do is just turn this over to you, and I know you're going to talk a lot about maintaining healthy brain and protecting your memory. There's a lot of things that you can do right now. I mean, things that I've done, and not just with Tianqi and herbs and so forth, but there were a lot of other things that you had recommended over the years that had really made huge enhancements. And I just know that my brain is much, much healthier than it used to be. So anyway, Roger, you're online, right?
I am, yes.
No, just checking. But anyway, go ahead and, there's so much that I want to interject, and we just may have to wait for future calls on this because I just got so much information. But let's talk about what you want to talk about tonight, and we'll go from there.
5 easy ways to protect your memory. I want to start out by saying, though, that for those of you who are new on the call, our company, HerbWorks, is a lot different than most nutrition companies, herbal companies you see on the market. Most companies these days are started by entrepreneurs who see a big business and they want to capitalize on it, and they're just buying things here and there off the internet, going on something they read in some book or some other thing, and maybe attaching a doctor's name on it to make it look legit. But the reality is our company is one of those old-fashioned companies that, you would imagine launched back in the 70s. We're somebody that saw a problem, experienced problems ourselves, and wanted to do something about it and help people. And that's how we came up with HerbWorks and really how Tianqi started. Tianqi is our flagship product. We have another one called Inner Peace. But Tianqi was something I started putting together, a little over 10 years ago. And it had to do with stress and energy. And we tell this story all the time that, our drink is a healthy version of an energy drink. It deals with stress, and to have real energy, you have to deal with your stress because stress literally on every single level destroys your body's ability to have energy flow and to experience real energy. But, the hidden part of that is that, there's a whole component built into it that deals with premature aging of the brain. And one of the reasons, I put that in the product and worked it into the formula itself is because your brain, when it's not functioning properly, is sending improper signals to the whole rest of your body. And so nothing can really be functioning at its highest level unless your brain actually is. And the other component of that is that at that time, back in the early parts of this century, we were We were just getting into the phase where Alzheimer's was becoming a big issue. People were having an unbelievable amount of memory issues, and it was just starting to surface that this was becoming a trend. So I wanted to do something to build into my drink to make it so nutritious that it would have an effect of slowing down aging of the brain. And it's a complex issue, but it has some really simple things that you can do to actually achieve that. Now, the third reason is that, and this is what happens with a lot of companies, or it used to, was that I had issues with my memory, myself. I started out in my 20s, I was having memory issues. Mine were related to physical trauma. I suffered concussions, and I remember after one concussion that it took me about 3 weeks to regain the ability to speak in full sentences. So that affected my life in a lot of ways that I never realized for the next 2 decades. And then when I discovered Chinese herbs and literally my life changed and my memory and brain started to open up, that was the beginning of the path to creating things like Tian Qi and wanting to help people. So that's how we got to where we are today, and why Tian Qi is such a unique formula, in that it deals not just with reducing cortisol, which is stress hormone, but it deals with all the different aspects of what can go wrong with your system and how to actually take something to combat that and to put you in a position to experience life differently. So tonight's talk is about 5 easy ways to protect your memory. And one of the things you have to kind of look at when you look at any aging situation, but particularly of your brain, you're dealing with 4 issues almost all the time. These are simultaneous issues that affect almost all level of your health, but particularly your brain is more susceptible to it. One of the reasons for that is that your brain isn't set up to deal with toxic chemicals very well. And so the introduction of all the different chemicals into our diet in the last 40 to 50 years that the brain has never really had to deal with because of the blood-brain barrier. But there's also, besides the chemicals introduced in the diet, there's an introduction of certain things that weaken that barrier. So there's a lot more stuff makes it up into your brain, which really heightens your requirements for a lot of things. So when you're looking at aging of the brain, though, and particularly your memory, you're looking at 4 basic issues, and that is inflammation, circulation, starvation, and stress. And you might be wondering, starvation, why is he talking about starvation? Well, literally, a lot of your issues with your brain, and one of the things that kind of pushes you over the edge with most aging of the brain and memory issues is literally that your brain is starving for certain nutrients. And that can go on for decades in most people. They're just not getting adequate amounts of certain nutrients that actually feed the processes in your brain, and they're not getting an adequate amount of antioxidants that protect the brain. Yet we're all being flooded with tons of chemicals in our diet, and we're being flooded with tremendous amounts of stress. Information overload creates a type of stress that no one has experienced before at any time in this planet. And then just that combination of things raises your requirements for certain nutrients, and literally the diet hasn't taken care of that basic need, and so we all need to supplement. And literally a lot of the issues that you're dealing with your brain have to do with the combination of inflammation and starvation, and the fact that excessive stress hormone in stressful situations drives up your requirements for everything. So we're going to go over a lot of things on that tonight, 5 easy ways to protect your memory. And I want to start off by just talking about the food that you eat. Your diet plays a huge role in your memory, and it can literally change your memory in a matter of weeks just by changing your diet. And you might wonder how that could possibly happen, but the amazing thing, I'll tell you, of the whole world of nutrition these days is that it's become so advanced in their ability to actually test what goes on in your body when you eat, and what goes on when you take something that's negative for your system, what goes on when you take something that's positive. They can now track improvements in your health within 30 minutes of eating a really good meal. And they can also track detriments to your health within 30 minutes of eating something poor. And, this is really one of the root problems of everything that's going on, especially with any type of aging, but particularly memory issues, because it adds to so many different levels of what's going on in your system. Like, just take the example of French fries. Now, I don't have anything against potatoes. I want to say that right off the bat. But French fries and potato chips are a type of fried food. They're fried in a deep fryer, and they, it's one of those foods that almost is up there with apple pie as being an American. Everybody eats potato chips and French fries. And you might not yourself, but there's probably people out there that don't go a day without having 2 servings of French fries. And yet they can look at that particular food and know within 30 minutes that it causes your arteries to constrict to just about their lowest level of, highest level, I should say, of constriction, to where your circulation is immediately almost halted in your system. It drops it so low through the combination of inflammation and toxic fats that within 30 minutes they can measure the lack of circulation going throughout your system. And besides that, it makes your entire circulatory system stiff. And that stiffness tends to lead to your own other issues, which have to do with high blood pressure and can lead to other cardiovascular events. And these things are very easy to track within a half an hour of eating a food. Now, that wouldn't just always just be French fries. It could be any type of diet that depends on deep fried food or oils that are fried. So one of the easiest things you can do right away to improve your diet is to cut out fried fats and cut out fried oils. And then, cut down on the other things that you eat along with that actually cause you to have more inflammation and a lack of circulation. Because that's what happens with these types of food. You're dealing with 3 basic issues that I just talked about right now just from eating one meal. And if you look at most people's diet, and that what I would say is called the standard American diet, which you look at fried foods, potato chips, French fries, a lot of sugar, usually a soda pop of some sort with a lot of sugar in it. You're not only looking at the amount of fried oil, you're looking at the amount of sugar in it, but with French fries, you're looking at a toxic chemical called acrylamide, which has in the average serving of those foods 800 times the allowable limit by the law set up by the Environmental Protection Agency for consumption in a day. 800 times. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is it in the food? Well, because when they set those limits, it was for acrylamide in water, and it wasn't for acrylamide in food. They didn't know it existed there. So because those foods have been on the market for decades before that law was passed, and now they know about it, there's not much they're really doing about it. Although in California, they're trying to set some limits by law on foods. But acrylamide is a cancer-causing chemical. And just from the fact that it is a cancer-causing chemical, it creates incredible amounts of inflammation. Now, when you look at the fact that it's associated with producing inflammation and cancer, and you look at the fact that those types of food constrict your circulation and actually play a role in starvation. Because why? Because it requires nutrients to run the processes to protect your body from all those things that are going on. And if you have them in your system, you're going to use them up really fast because you're continually eating a diet like that. And, one of the things of taking in oils that is so bad for you, fried oils, is that it makes it hard for your cellular membrane to come in contact with or utilize really good oils, which actually promotes the health of your cells. So your entire cell actually starts to be starved energetically from the fact that the cellular membranes aren't as pliable and fluid as they're supposed to be, and you're not taking in energy and nutrients at the level that they're actually supposed to be. So you're causing aging directly to your cell. And all three of these things, inflammation, circulation, and starvation, comes into effect. And we're only talking about a couple of different foods here. We're talking about cooking oil and sugar. And sugar itself adds to the inflammation. So you can imagine what happens to your brain and your entire system when you're continually combining this type of foods. Now, on the other spectrum, when you look at something like consuming salmon a couple times a week, or omega-3 fatty acids in fish oil, those two foods have been shown to lower your chances of getting Alzheimer's or memory loss, extreme memory loss, by somewhere between 30 and 50% just by having them a couple times a week. In fact, there was an amazing study I read on omega-3 fatty acids in fish oil. If you consume close to a tablespoon a day for a few months, you actually increase the amount of white matter in your brain by 20 to 30%. Now imagine that you actually increase the part of your brain that suffers a lot of damage during memory loss. So, I mean, this is quite amazing in the fact that you can take simple nutrients and by cleaning up your diet, have that profound of an effect on the health of your brain. Now, the best combination of foods, and there's all kinds of foods that improve memory and are beneficial for you. And if you look at the list, blueberries are one of them, dark fruits are one of them. Any type of berry has a type of antioxidant that makes it up into your brain after a few weeks of consuming them that has a very protective effect on your brain and has a long-term effect on memory. And so if you look at your diet and you take out a major portion of things that cause oxidative stress and inflammation and increase the ones that are actually good for your brain, eating really good oils, having, fish a couple times a week, consuming berries, all these things that are beneficial for your system, then it's such a quantum leap for most people if they can do the one and drop the other. A lot of people, though, make the mistake of thinking, well, I can stop in and eat fast food once a day and just take a multivitamin. Well, things don't work that way. You create so much inflammatory chemicals from the process of eating and metabolism that you have to offset it by the good things you put into your diet that contain the nutrients that your body will use to make antioxidants and also have antioxidants themselves. And that's really where you want to go with your diet, is canceling out things that cause inflammation because they all cut down on your circulation, and literally it causes a state of starvation for your brain because your body is using whatever energy and nutrient stores it has to offset what you just ate, and it has nothing left over to run repair mechanisms. And so anytime you can get that combination down, you've made a major leap in taking care of your brain. And besides that, you've cut down the amount of chemicals that actually make it up into your brain and cause damage. And that's a major plus because you know what? We're all stressed. We all have stress. We all have, the situations that we get into where we produce a lot of stress hormone. It's a major issue in life for most people. And that combined with a poor diet really sets you up for a chemical overload for your brain and causes aging of the brain. So move on to another point here is looking at even something as simple as drinking water. And this is one I like to bring up for memory because no one talks about it. And the fact that you can have issues with your brain just from a lack of hydration. Hydration itself creates issues with inflammation and circulation. If you're not drinking enough water, and I'm talking about clean water, I'm not talking about tap water. Tap water in itself, in most cities, contains fluoride, which is a known neurotoxin. So why would you want to be taking a known neurotoxin in your water every single time you drink? Why have it in your food every time you make something that requires cooking water, making pasta, making rice? Why would you want to be adding minute doses of fluoride to that and consuming it? It's a known neurotoxin. And so you want to be able to actually drink clean water. You want to have some sort of water system set up so where you're drinking clean filtered water and doing that on a daily basis and drinking enough of it to stay hydrated. I had this amazing lesson I learned, and this is kind of the way it is when you're in the nutrition industry for so long and you do so many thousands of consultations and things, that you talk to people who will just tell you something randomly that they don't even think about, and yet it's a profound lesson for you. And this was one of my friends was experiencing vertigo, and she had to go to a neurologist and have an MRI of her brain and all these different issues going on. And the neurologist walked out of the office and said to her, "You know, you have a beautiful brain." And my friend, being a woman, said, "You know, no man's ever said that to me my whole life," right? And she was, my friend, by the way, is 62 years old. And he goes, "No, no, I'm serious." He goes, I looked at your brain, and most people your age, their brain has already shrunk about 20%. I look at most MRIs, and a brain of somebody that's 60 years old has shrunk a good, a good amount from a combination of alcohol, poor diet, and lack of water. He says people just don't drink water. He goes, and they don't realize how that impacts their brain. What kind of amazing lesson. All the different studies up to that point I've done on brain activity, and I never thought of something as simple as staying hydrated. But what happens when you're not hydrated? You create inflammation. Your circulation goes way down. A major portion of everything in your body, including your blood, depends on clean water to detox and to create movement throughout your entire system. Literally, your body can be starving just for something as simple as water. And anytime you don't have water, your literally body goes into a type of stress response. This is something that's really fascinating to me the longer I'm into studying stress, is that you can have a stress response just from eating too much sugar. You can have a stress response from eating gluten if you're allergic to gluten, or dairy if you're allergic to dairy. Your body can have a small stress response. It's very similar to an emotional stress, maybe not on the same level, but it's continuously happening and causing you to create inflammatory chemicals. And so something as simple as drinking water that's clean, that doesn't have chemicals in it, is something that we all can do. You can't depend on the government sending water to your house it's a great thing that they do it. We do have the best water system in the entire world, but you have to turn it into something clean and drinkable when it comes to your house. And so, that alone has a major impact not only on your memory, but on every other aspect of your health. Now, one of the other things you want to look at is antioxidants. Antioxidants, I would say, is a major issue in most people's diets. We all experience so much oxidative stress that literally we're producing more inflammatory chemicals with every meal that we eat and everything that we put in our body that we never can make up with through the normal level of antioxidants you get from your food. And your body just doesn't produce enough of its own internal antioxidants, usually, to even deal with one meal of low nutrition food, low quality food. So you have to actually supplement some level of nutrition into your system and antioxidants to help your body offset the amount of oxidative stress. And this is particularly important to your brain because if you look at the ways that your brain ages through stress, one of the main things, and this is really the main issue with how your brain ages, besides the fact that it's starving for nutrients and it has issues with inflammation and circulation, well, one of the ways you deal with the inflammation, and it helps circulation, is to have high quality antioxidants. But you want particular ones that focus on maybe brain issues, because every herb, every nutrient has an affinity for a certain part of your body, and you want to have things in your system that maybe are dealing specifically with brain. When you look at antioxidants like green tea and resveratrol, you probably heard of resveratrol. It's been in the news. It's been touted as one of the most important anti-aging discoveries of the last decade. And one of the reasons for that is that it has a particular effect of activating different enzymes in your cells that promote longevity. It has a direct effect on what they call telomeres part of your cell, part of your DNA, the cap of your DNA that actually is being measured, or it's possible to measure it and tell how much oxidative stress you have or how rapidly you are actually aging, is all a part of how one of the aspects by which resveratrol affects your brain energy. Now, part of what we do with Tianqi is we actually use the resveratrol in the formula. You know, we talk about stress, we talk about nutrients for your brain, but we also realize that most people have an overload of inflammation in your brain. Now, we have a type of resveratrol in our product that is 98% pure, and it's organic, and it is one of the most important anti-aging substances for your brain. If you look at all the studies on the French paradox, where they're talking about red wine, and they're talking about how red wine contains resveratrol and it's so potent of an anti-aging nutrient, well, they're actually overdoing it trying to sell a lot of red wine. But the fact is that resveratrol is important, but to get the amount of resveratrol that we have in one packet of Tianqi, you'd have to drink about 1,000 glasses of red wine. And so I don't think anybody out there wants to do that in a year, let alone doing it every single day. And so that's really when your ability to look at information and distill what is actually the truth is a great example of that is looking at red wine. If you truly want the antioxidant activity that you'll find in red wine, you need to take resveratrol, and usually you need to take it in a product. Now, the amount of resveratrol we have in a single pack of Tianqi not only equals about 1,000 glasses of red wine, but it would probably cost you between $50 and $75 if you had to buy it in a store, just one single nutrient. And we just include it in Tianqi because it's important. It's important to, stop the inflammation, and inflammation is so tied into stress that you can't just be working on stress hormone without working on all the implications that having excessive stress hormone actually brings about in your brain, and that is inflammation. Resveratrol is something that in its pure form has been shown to make it up in your brain and actually deal with inflammation. One of the other great antioxidants for your brain, which most people don't associate it with, is green tea. Green tea is amazing in the fact that, this is something that I love about the health food market, but something I also don't like is that they love to play favorites and they love to talk about new things. And once you've been on the market for maybe 10 years, they really stop talking about you. And one of those aspects is green tea. Everybody's heard about green tea so much that nobody wants to talk about it anymore. But green tea is one of the most powerful antioxidants you could ever take in your system for anything. It doesn't matter if you're talking about cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, any issue. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants you could incorporate in your diet, but particularly for your brain. And the thing that I love about green tea is that it's an acetylcholine sterase inhibitor. And what might that mean to you? Well, acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter in your brain that's responsible for the making of memory and the retrieval of memory. So whenever you're really dealing with any memory issue, the main neurotransmitter involved in that is acetylcholine. Now, if you look at what is acetylcholine sterase inhibitor, though, acetylcholine sterase is an enzyme that we all produce to clear extra or too much excessive levels of acetylcholine out of your brain, just in case you might be having it. I don't think it's too much of an issue for most people because they're all starving for nutrients that make acetylcholine. But acetylcholine sterase inhibitors are the basis for almost all Alzheimer's drugs that are on the market today. Those drugs are designed to be acetylcholine sterase inhibitors, and the theory is that the more you have, the more you clear out that enzyme, it'll allow you to have more acetylcholine in your brain. Well, that's a great theory, but if you don't have enough acetylcholine, it's not going to do much for you. Well, green tea has actually been shown in studies to work more effectively than the drugs they actually have on the market as an acetylcholine sterase inhibitor. So that type of nutrient is amazing for its ability to help your brain not only deal with inflammation and circulation, but to actually just cause almost a lightening and a brightening of your mind when you get it in the right form. We have a specific form that I use in Tianqi that's actually bound with a phospholipid. And so your body absorbs that at a much higher rate. And the reason it does that is because a phospholipid is the type of fat that your cells are made up of. And so it's real easy for a nutrient that's bound with a phospholipid to actually make it into your cells where you need to actually have it go so it does the most benefit. So that's the type of green tea we use, is the green tea phospholipid. It's very highly absorbed. And also the type that we use in Tianqi has studies on it where it was actually used in a weight loss study. And this was an actual clinical trial where people lost a substantial amount of weight compared to people eating the exact same diet without taking it. And it was one of the most substantial studies ever done on green tea in that particular kind. And so it's just an added benefit that we throw into our product. Again, why? We weren't thinking about the diet so much. We wanted a type of green tea that your body would actually absorb and wouldn't be flushing the effects out of your system within a couple hours of taking it. This is the problem with a lot of antioxidants like green tea. Your body will utilize it for maybe between an hour and 2 hours and then flush the rest out. But that particular form of green tea, because it's a phospholipid, actually has around an 8-hour level of activity in your system, meaning that your body and your cells are actually benefiting from it for up to 8 hours. And that's a measurable effect from it. So we're real happy to use that, and we know that it has a profound effect on protecting your brain. And this goes back to really the issue of why do we need to protect the brain so much? Why does it have so much inflammation? And it all gets back to that fourth thing I talked about, which was stress. You know, you need things like resveratrol, you need things like green tea, because basically you're dealing with an abnormal amount of inflammation due to the chemicals that make it up into your brain. But those chemicals become a problem when you're highly stressed. And this really is the core issue with most memory issues, come back to this one thing, which is excessive cortisol and being locked into a stress response. And why is that? Because cortisol affects something called the hippocampus area of your brain. And that particular area of your brain is the memory center. That's where you store memory. That's what's involved with acetylcholine and basically retrieving and laying down memory. And that particular part of your brain, cortisol seems to have an effect of increasing the amount of chemicals that part of your brain absorbs. It's not that the cortisol itself damages it so much, but it's the fact that it allows it to almost become a sponge for toxins that make it up into your brain. And so your first line of defense really for your memory is dealing with stress and dealing with stress issues, excessive cortisol, and being put into that position where you're always locked into a stress response and not able to come out of it. And this is also an issue that a lot of people don't understand. You need to have stress responses. A stress response is a very healthy thing. You couldn't survive without a stress response. It's basically, it's survival mode. Your brain needs to trigger off into stress response. But the problem with it is because of our modern lifestyle, we have lost the ability to actually shut it off. So we're having so many stressors during the day through our emotional issues and just the overload of information, the aspect that we're trying to do so many things at one time, that we are having stress responses continuously and never actually shutting one off. And if you throw in a lack of sleep on top of that, then your body has lost its last little chance to maybe shut off your stress response. And so you're locked into it all the time, and your brain is just set up to be damaged continuously by the amount of chemicals that make it up into your brain. Stress itself weakens your blood-brain barrier, And then the other worst aspect about it is that everybody eats worse when they're stressed. If you don't have a plan for your diet, you're going to eat worse when you're stressed out. You're going to consume more fried fats, more sugar, more foods with chemicals in it because you want to just feel differently right away. And so our whole theory with Tianqi is, why don't you feel differently first thing in the morning? Why don't you set yourself up for a great day and great success by taking something that not only lowers your amount of stress, but actually activates your brain and puts you in a position to have different responses to things all day long. And that's really what the formula is about. The herbal part of Tianqi is all about helping you not only to have healthy stress response, but making sure that most of the time your energy resides up in the frontal lobe of your brain, that forehead area where you actually are engaged in creativity and the ability to focus, to have fun. And all these things are aspects of being up in your higher brain, not locked back down into the lower part of your brain, which is all about stress response. And the beautiful thing about doing that and focusing on that is that the longer or the more often you reside in that frontal part of your brain, the harder it is for you to fall down into complete stress response and get locked into that and not come out of it. It's much easier for you to see the bigger picture in life by actually moving up and residing more often in that part of your brain where you see the big picture and the big possibilities, and you're having more fun, and you're able to actually move through experiences and not get locked into emotional issues during the day. And that's all a part of just dealing with stress response. Having a healthy stress response means dealing with the stress, moving out of it, moving on, and doing something else. We have some really special herbs in Tianqi, things like rhodiola, been used and studied in Russia for over 50, 60 years. It has so many different effects and has been shown to lower stress hormone, and we have the exact amount used in countless studies that show that happens. We have a special form of organic ashwagandha, which has been proven in clinical trials to lower stress response in the amount that we actually have in the drink. This is one of the things we like to do with our product, Tianqi and Inner Peace. We actually like to give you the amount that was used in a clinical trial or in a test or over time been shown to actually make a difference in your health. We like to put it in a quality and the amount that actually will make a difference in how you're actually feeling. So dealing with this stress response basically is helping you to lower the amount of cortisol and stress hormone in your body and providing you with the actual antioxidant protection to keep your brain from experiencing too much inflammation and damaging that memory center in your brain. This is one of the primary focuses of Tianqi. And then we also have things, and this is probably number 4, the 5 easy ways to protect your brain, is that you have to feed it nutrients that it needs every single day to actually run itself, to actually be healthy. And one or two of the things you need to do that, well, I think number 1 probably in most people's diet is having a source of choline by which to help you produce acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, remember, is the neurotransmitter responsible for the speed by which your brain works, and it's the neurotransmitter that helps you lay down memory and access memory. And so when you find out that like 90% of Americans are actually deficient in choline, which is the main nutrient used to produce acetylcholine, you kind of get the idea that why we're having, that could be a major issue, is why we're having so many memory problems in this country. In fact, we just don't have a diet that actually supplies our brain with one of the building blocks, the simple things it actually needs to produce the neurotransmitter responsible for all your memory that's going on, all the processing, the speed by which you process information. You'll find with a lot of people that get into their 50s, they just say they just seem like they can't keep up with life. Everything's moving too fast. That's usually a sign that their brain is just not processing information. And if you talk to most people, they have very few food sources for choline in their diet, and so they're just not going to be producing acetylcholine. This is why I find it very fascinating that they'll produce drugs that deal with the enzyme that may be clearing acetylcholine in your brain, but they won't actually ever be suggesting that you have some source of choline in your diet. You just cannot make it if the substance is not there to make it from. And so this deals with one of the main issues I think is going on with most memory issues besides stress. That is the starvation of the brain. Your brain needs good sources of choline. It needs good sources of food that provide amino acids to make other neurotransmitters. And it needs certain B vitamins and nutrients just to run the healthy processes by which your cells actually have to have a healthy nervous system. And that, again, is one of the things that choline does for your system. The type of choline we use actually has structure and function claims, meaning it's been shown in studies to do basic things that are just that you can actually talk about by law. It's always fascinating in the world of nutrition that you can have structure and function claims for normal foods. But choline, and the one that we use, actually has been shown to increase circulation and help you to have a healthy liver. It actually helps your liver process healthy fats and metabolize them and use them for energy. It also reduces homocysteine levels, which a lot of people never talk about, but homocysteine levels are one of the main ways that our body produces inflammatory chemicals. It has to do with the processing of certain amino acids in your diet if you're eating excessive amounts of animal protein. And it's also implicated in about 25% of all heart attacks because it has such an inflammatory effect on your arteries and in your entire cardiovascular system. So it also has been shown to improve lifelong memory if you're supplementing it when you're actually pregnant and when you're a child. You can have an impact just on the amount of choline that was consumed in the womb and in the first year of life will have an impact on your memory for your entire life. So it's an important nutrient. And again, 90% of Americans, because of their dietary choices, are actually deficient in choline. And so we make it not only one of the standard, kind of standard bearer nutrients in our formula, but we also have something along with it called DMAE, which is another precursor molecule to making acetylcholine in your brain. We think that it's so important, along with the stress herbs in our formula, to take care of this one aspect of a healthy memory, that we have two different things that are primarily in it just to make sure that your brain is firing and processing information at the speed that it needs to do that. Now, I'm going to wrap it up with a fifth thing for fifth easy way to increase your memory. And that's one that everybody probably needs to do, and not very many of us do it. And I'll explain energetically why you should actually be doing this. I think everybody should sit down once a day and just get quiet and meditate. And I know that meditation is a word that scares a lot of people, but really what it means is just sitting down, becoming quiet, and oftentimes just paying attention to your breath and your breathing. You don't have to have an agenda when you sit down and do it, other than to follow your breath and just quietly breathe in and out and pay attention to it. And the reason you do this is because an entire cascade of great things happens to you when you sit down and do it. Even if you think you're the worst meditator in the world, they've proven that it changes your brain over a period of time. You sit down, and what happens when you pay attention to your breath, within a couple of minutes, your nervous system changes. You switch right out of sympathetic nervous system and go into parasympathetic. And what does that actually mean? That means you jump right out of stress response and go right into calming and becoming present because you're paying attention to your breath, and your body just relaxes and starts to shut off stress hormones. It can happen within a matter of a few minutes. So you can even do this when you're at work. You don't have to do it first thing in the morning or be in a quiet room. You can just close your eyes and breathe for 5 minutes and throw the switch on your entire nervous system and take you back into a more calm, centered, present state. But if you do it in the morning when you first get up, or you do it before bed, a really fascinating thing happens. Not only do you shut off your nervous system response, your sympathetic nervous system, your stress response, you start to calm that and you start to become relaxed, but your brain shifts its energy. It shifts out of that lower part where you're having the fight or flight syndrome going on, that stress response. You're coming up into the upper levels of your brain and activating the area that has to do with creativity. It opens up your imagination, your ability to see just what you want to do in life, what you enjoy. It's the ability to have pleasure. All these things are associated with a different aspect of your brain, and you can automatically cause that shift of energy to go up by just sitting down and becoming aware of your breath. It's one of the great things you can do for your memory because, again, what are you doing? You're shutting off nervous system response. You're cutting down on cortisol, which is causing inflammation in the memory centers of your brain. The more often you do this, the easier it is to stay into that part of your brain. And if you're having a stress, it's easier to shut it off and move back into it, just like the effects of Tian Qi. In fact, we've formulated Tian Qi to have a very similar effect energetically on your brain as meditation. And so the combination of the two is a great combination for your memory, and it's a great combination as an anti-aging system for your brain. And so that's one of the reasons why we put our formula together the way it is, because we knew that if you could open up certain energy centers in your brain, not only would it have a direct impact on your memory, but it would have a direct impact on laying down good memories, because when you're in that part of your brain, you're actually having more positive experiences and you're moving through life the way you're supposed to move through it. You deal with your problems, you have great experiences, and you move on from your stressors. And that's one of the best things you could ever do for your memory. And so, Zach, I'm going to cut it off there and open it up for questions. I think I talked probably a little too long.
Actually, we were supposed to do 20 minutes. We did.
I know. You know what? I didn't look at my phone, and I thought. Then all of a sudden I thought, man, I wonder what time it is. And then it was 49 minutes.
But it's all great information. You know, it's quite amazing. You know, the amount of information you gave in the first 15 minutes was perfect, and then you just kept going, and you know, the information is incredible. But like I say, Roger's got a tremendous amount of information. We're going to be doing these calls on a weekly basis. In fact, we haven't set up the podcast yet for iTunes. They'll be available in a couple of weeks, but you'll be able to search HerbWorks on iTunes and get these podcasts. They'll also be on our new website, which will be up sometime in June, and access all the calls there and get the feed. And again, we'll be doing these calls weekly. So I'm going to take this off of recording now so we can go into questions and answers. Bear with me one second.